exciting.
Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome. Welcome to our Sunday Assembly for Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. I'm the Reverend Dr. David Breeden. I'm Senior Minister here at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. Our building is closed to large gatherings at the moment, so thanks for joining us online, and a special thanks to all of our tech people who get us online and keep us online. Thanks a lot. First Unitarian Society is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. We are an intentionally and radically inclusive congregational humanist community dedicated to promoting a brave and free search for purpose, meaning, and justice. After assembly today, join us for coffee hour and join special guest Jess Braverman, Legal Director of Gender Justice and the attorney that's representing FUS in our lawsuit challenging reproductive restrictions in Minnesota. We'll have general conversation and also breakout rooms during our coffee hour. Zoom link will be in the chat during the end of assembly. Keep an eye on that. Or you can join us from any computer, tablet, smartphone with one click, and that's firstunitarian.org/coffee-hour. And you can join in. Even though our building is closed to large gatherings, there are opportunities to gather with members and friends in smaller groups. Check out the Friday update for what's happening this week and join in some of our smaller groups. Our assembly theme this month is Living with Intention. So now relax, take some time out of ordinary time and explore living with intention. Each week when we gather, we light our chalice and read one of our aspirations or the UU principles. Today, it's our second UU principle. We light this chalice for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Thanks, Bob. Now for our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
It's hurried and I'm feeling weak and worried and I need a little respite for my soul. I find a place and time to leave this trouble behind, some time to sit with myself and be still.
I need some rest.
I need a respite for my soul. Take a little time to leave my cares behind. Find a little comfort and some peace of mind, some time to sit with myself and be still. I wait to be enlightened and I find that I'm frightened and I need a little respite for my soul. I find my life's a blessing if I learn a simple lesson, learn to sit with myself and be still.
I need some rest.
I need a respite for my soul. Take a little time to leave my cares behind. Find a little comfort and some peace of mind, some time to sit with myself and be still. I found the gift of knowing in a quiet place of growing, and I need a little respite for my soul. My faults I'm forgiven in the moment I'm living, as I sit with myself to be still.
I need some rest.
I need a little respite for my soul. Take a little time to leave my cares behind. Find a little comfort and some peace of mind. Sometimes just sit with myself and be still.
I need some rest.
I need a little respite for my soul. Take a little time to leave my cares behind. Find a little comfort and some peace of mind. Sometimes just sit with myself and be still. Sometimes just sit with myself and be still.
Hi, I'm Joe Lazur, the treasurer of the FUS Foundation. This year, our board is looking to replace 2 retiring members, and we're hoping that some of you might find this an interesting opportunity. The foundation board oversees about $2 million in assets, and we disperse about 5% of that each year on worthy programming. The job of the board members is to make sure that, number 1, we manage those funds wisely, 2, that we continue to engage our FUS community in ongoing fundraising, and 3, and most importantly, that we find ways to work with both individuals and groups on dispersing those funds on worthwhile programs that help support FUS's overall long-term mission. Now, I've been on the board for 4 years now, and one of the things I find most fulfilling in my role is that I get to work with a great group of FUS members who are really committed about finding ways to use the foundation to help support and promote FUS both on our internal programming as well as on our external work in the greater community here in Minneapolis. Now, in terms of logistics, the board meets once a month for about 90 minutes each meeting. It's not a huge time commitment, and we divvy up our work. We have 2 subcommittees. Each member's on either our finance or our development committee. We try to split the workload so that nobody's too overwhelmed. And so, generally speaking, most board members probably spend 2 to 3 hours a month outside of our meetings getting their work done. So it's not a lot of time. Anyway, if this sounds like it's a good fit for you, I hope you'll give it some serious consideration, and I want to thank you for your time.
Since our founding in 1881, members' and friends' support of First Unitarian Society has been essential for our ongoing mission. Our Sunday assemblies, community celebrations, cultural enrichment, and work in social justice come to you with the hard work of our dedicated staff and volunteers. Your contributions will help assure the continuing work of First Unitarian Society. Give now at PayPal, the Give Plus app, or firstunitarian.org/donate. Thank you.
On Sundays when we gather, we take a few minutes to reflect on the joys, sorrows, and milestones of the human experience. We do this so that we stay in touch with our own humanity. We do this to remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness, and we do this so that no one among us is alone, either in celebrating joy or in facing the burdens of life. This morning, we have some good news from FUS member Maureen Hunt, who had surgery for breast cancer this past Tuesday. Her husband Dan sent this update. Maureen had a very successful mastectomy and reconstruction on the right side, as well as a reduction on the left. Cancer was contained to the breast tissue, and so was officially stage 1. Maureen's being cared for well by family members at home now, and with a wide circle of family and friends bringing meals. She'll learn about any further treatment needed at the end of February. Dan says, "Thank you so very much for being here for us." We extend our good wishes to Maureen for comfortable healing and continued progress. And we have a huge joy this morning from FUS members Rebecca and Perry Nixon. Sonia Harper Nixon was born on Friday at 9:06 p.m. She's 5 pounds, 13 ounces. Rebecca reports that Sonia made a very dramatic entrance into the world with an emergency C-section, but she and Mom are both healthy and happy. Dad and big brother Oliver are also doing great and are looking forward to having her home. We at FUS are taking part in a meal train for the Nixons. If you're already on our meal volunteer list, you'll receive an email before the end of assembly. And if you'd like to get on the list, please contact me. Congratulations to the family and welcome Sonia. We now take a moment of silence to reflect on all the challenges and heartbreak going on in our lives and in our world. And we think with gratitude of all those who are living lives of justice, service, compassion, and joy. Let us now share a moment of silence.
When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love.
Hi, I'm Bob Adderholm, president of the Foundation of First Unitarian Society. As we announced in December, the foundation made its 2021 Kurt Pearson Social Justice Fund grants to 6 nonprofit organizations. Those grants totaled approximately $9,000. I'm here to introduce you to Lori Casey, the executive director of the Duluth-based We Health Clinic, one of the 2021 Pearson Grant recipients. She's going to say a few words about her role at the clinic's work, and the project that our Pearson Grant is funding. Over the coming weeks, you'll be hearing from some other grant recipients. Before I turn it over to Lori, though, I wanted to mention to those of you who are not acquainted with the Pearson Fund that its mission is to support nonprofit organizations doing the social justice work in our community that Kurt Pearson cared so deeply about. The fund, which is managed and administered by the foundation, was created by Mibbs and Perry Pearson to honor the life and memory of their dear son, Kurt, who died of AIDS at age 29. Since inception 31 years ago, The fund has grown to almost $100,000 and has distributed about $50,000 in grants. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Lori. Thank you so much, Lori, for the work you do, and which we're so happy to support. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Bob. We are honored to be able to be a recipient of the Kurt Pearson Grant Fund. So thank you so much. My name is Lori Casey, and I'm the Executive Director of We Health Clinic in Duluth, Minnesota. I've been with the organization in various capacities since our inception in 1981. I became the Executive Director in 2008 when our founding director, Tina Welsh, retired. So our organization serves men, women, transgender, and non-binary folks from northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Our patient population primarily consists of low-income, high-risk, and hard-to-reach individuals. We are the only independent, nonprofit abortion clinic left in Minnesota. We provide low-cost or free family planning services, gender-affirming hormone care, medication and in-clinic abortion services, including telehealth medication abortion services. We are a trusted medical provider in our community, and we can offer quick access to reproductive health services and information in a non-judgmental manner. So we have many people that come to our clinic that seek us out just because of our culture. The grant funds will be used to pay for sexually transmitted infection testing, such as chlamydia, gonorrhea, trich, rapid HIV, and rapid syphilis for uninsured and underinsured individuals in our area. According to the Minnesota Department of Health, this past fall, there's a syphilis epidemic in Duluth also. So we get many requests to do rapid syphilis testing. With this grant funding, we hope to reach at least 40 clients with this funding. And again, thank you so much. We really appreciate your generous donation to our clinic.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Lori, for the work that you and your colleagues do. I think we're delighted to support it. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I wrote this poem for the reproductive justice resources that are compiled by the Unitarian Universalist Association's Side with Love campaign. The Side with Love campaign has just kicked off its 30 days of justice, beginning with reproductive justice. My piece is entitled, Learn to Tell Your Story. My most impactful life decisions, in chronological order: to have abortions when I needed them, to get sober, to give birth to our child. If each life is precious, so is mine, so is theirs, so is yours. I do not regret nor feel ashamed about my abortions. Rather, I am grateful for access to abortion care by compassionate professional providers, and for, as Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison has said, the opportunity to captain my own ship. A wish list for all of us, especially my adult child's generation. Robust, reproductive justice, health, and freedom without stigma, apology, or restriction. An end to heteronormative, patriarchal, white supremacy culture. And love and liberation in abundance. May it be so. 49 years ago today, Americans woke up to a full front page on the newspaper. The day before, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger flew to Paris, France, to negotiate the end of the Vietnam War. Lyndon Johnson died of a heart attack. And below the fold in most newspapers, there was a note about this U.S. Supreme Court decision in Roe v. Wade, which made abortion legal in the United States prior to fetal viability. Current activists believe that this will probably be our last anniversary of Roe v. Wade, in which it stands as the law of the land. And it must be said that Roe was never enough. We have made of Roe an idol. We have considered it the best last hope for reproductive rights in the United States. And to be sure, Roe has for 49 years allowed people the idea of planning their lives, the opportunity to captain their own ship, to have a measure of bodily autonomy. But Roe was the floor, not the ceiling. It never guaranteed access. It didn't stop restriction after restriction, which now puts reproductive justice out of reach for millions of Americans. And it didn't stop political fighting and grandstanding and the packing of the courts to render it impotent. Let's talk about what happens after the fall of Roe and where we can go from here. I want to start with a new book by gender studies scholar Kyla Schuller. Professor Schuller, in her book, The Trouble with White Women, teaches that there have been two streams of feminism since the beginning of the concept in the 1800s. Now, this may not be news to you, but it was certainly news to me. Professor Schuller contrasts white feminism with intersectional feminism, and she describes them this way. White feminism upholds systems and structures that are in place, and it seeks access for white women to the structures of power and systems that are occupied, and power that are occupied by white middle class and upper class men. It understands the single access of sexism as the barrier to equality. Intersectional feminism envisions new structures altogether. It centers marginalized voices. It understands that racial justice and reproductive justice and economic justice are all tied to liberation. And without this liberation, there can be no full bodily autonomy. It centers reproductive justice. Health activist Billy Avery has worked to change the conspiracy of silence surrounding reproductive health issues in the Black community and the disparities between white and Black women. She says a lot of white organizations were only looking at abortion and birth control as singular issues, but we had to look at it within the context of our lives. There are many issues surrounding us that affect our reproductive decisions. By Black women coming up with the concept of reproductive justice, we broadened the whole definition of reproductive health to include justice issues, not just physical health issues. End quote. Reproductive justice is an intersectional approach that brings together reproductive health, social justice, and human rights perspectives and addresses, this is the key part, addresses structural inequalities, such as a lack of economic and political power that can affect a person's ability to control their own reproductive future. Roe didn't take that into account. White feminism has not traditionally, historically, taken that into account. So as we contemplate life after the fall of Roe, I am curious, what can we build back better? Schuller's book has helped me continue my quest to root out the places where white supremacy culture has its hooks in me. I recognize myself a lot in those pages regarding how white feminism has taught me to be a feminist in the world. And when we know better, we do better. So this book is really instructive to me. I hope a link to it is being posted in the chat. I want to lift up another consideration here, and that is around language. When we know better, we do better. Our language for the past 49 years and before has been about when women get pregnant, women who need abortions, and structuring this as on the binary of male and female. I invite us to use the language of people who get pregnant, people who get abortions, who need abortions, people who need full spectrum reproductive health care. There are people who are gender fluid, gender expansive, gender nonconforming, who also need access and care. And when we reinforce the binary of only women get pregnant, we add to the stigma and the difficulty and, frankly, the violence that is done to communities who are not included. Another word about language. In the white feminist movement, we have used the language of safe, legal, and rare as it pertains to abortion. We hope abortion will be safe, legal, and rare. That rare piece adds to stigma around when people need to access abortion care. It also suggests that there are acceptable abortions and unacceptable abortions, and that is not for me to say or decide. I invite you, rather than using language of safe, legal, and rare, to use language that is often about access, about affordability, about bodily autonomy. We can shift that, and language definitely matters. So let me say a word about the landscape now, and I want to tell you that during our coffee hour today, we will have two guests with us, both from Gender Justice, the organization Gender Justice. Jess Braverman is the attorney at Gender Justice who represents First Unitarian Society in our case against the state of Minnesota. We are suing for removal of restrictions to abortion rights in our state. So Jess Braverman, and also Erin May Quaid, who is the policy director at Gender Justice and also at Unrestrict Minnesota. And they will have more to say about this landscape. But let me include a few thoughts here, because I think as a humanist, as a Unitarian Universalist, how the landscape in the country is shaped is a part of my faith commitment to understand that and to work for justice in these ways. Okay, so I talked about Roe v. Wade provided legality for abortion prior to fetal viability, right? Viability is when a fetus is able to live outside the womb, often with help, with care, with medical support, but the fetus is viable to live outside the womb. It makes the idea of abortion available. Along comes Casey v. Pennsylvania. And Casey, the ruling in the Casey case was about an undue burden, that abortion was available as long as there was no undue burden. And all of the hundreds of restrictions that we've seen in the past few years have come as a challenge to Casey. Is it an undue burden for a person to have a 24-hour waiting period, or 48 or 72? Is it an undue burden for people seeking abortions to have to listen to a script, a medically unnecessary and unsanctioned script? No, it's sanctioned, but it's medically correct, right? Medically incorrect script. Is that an undue burden prior to their abortion? Is it an undue burden to have to travel hours and hours to stay overnight before your abortion procedure the next day? Is it an undue burden for abortion clinics to have admitting privileges in hospitals? Abortion is an incredibly safe procedure. So all of those in some way passed muster as not stating an undue burden. The cases right now before the Supreme Court in Texas and Mississippi strike right at the heart of fetal viability. The Texas case says that abortion is legal up to 6 weeks, but not past 6 weeks, past the last menstrual period. In Mississippi, the Mississippi case says 15 weeks. Both of those are clearly pre-viability, and court watchers expect those cases to be upheld, those laws in Texas and Mississippi to be upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, which signals the end of Roe. Okay? There are some 26 states in the United States that have so-called trigger laws, which means that when Roe falls, abortion immediately becomes illegal in those states. 2 of our neighbor states, North Dakota and South Dakota, have trigger laws. Wisconsin and Iowa do not. Abortion in Iowa is safer, according to their legal framework, than it is in Wisconsin, and it remains to be seen what will happen. In Minnesota, abortion access is relatively safe here. The Supreme Court decision Doe v. Gomez said that Minnesotans have the right to have an abortion and the right to make the decision to have an abortion without the government putting their thumb on the scale. So abortion is constitutionally protected in Minnesota. That does not stop our legislators from trying to impose laws that are extremely restrictive, and that's what our lawsuit is about. But what it means that if Roe falls, our 5 abortion clinics in Minnesota are likely to be inundated with requests for service. 5 clinics for our entire state is already not enough. It's already not enough. People have to wait longer, they have to travel further. It's not enough. And there are some estimates that the number of requests for abortion care at the clinics in Minnesota could rise 370% if Roe falls. That's stunning. That's shocking. It takes my breath away. And so there are so many opportunities for despair. We can't believe this day could come, and yet we've known for years that this day is coming. And so what can we do? What can we do? Well, I'll tell you something that a couple of organizations now are doing. I want to lift up especially Unrestrict Minnesota. First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis is a founding member of Unrestrict Minnesota, which is a coalition of 28 organizations, grassroots organizations, who are working at the intersection of reproductive justice, reproductive health, reproductive rights, racial justice, in the idea of this intersectional feminism, trying to envision, articulate, and build a new way. Our group, Unrestrict Minnesota, is already at work on analysis, on asset mapping, on strategy to plan how will Minnesota clinics, Minnesota organizations respond to this perhaps huge influx of need for service. So that's already happening. Also in Minnesota, something that's very exciting that's happening is a reproductive freedom caucus in the Minnesota legislature. In the House and in the Senate, there are members who have come together to say, we are not just sitting back to be on the defensive when egregious restrictions and bills come forward. We are going to be out front for a reproductive justice agenda, which is trying to pass a bill that will say medically unnecessary and medically inaccurate language will not be mandated by the state to be read to people who are seeking abortions and other things like that. So let me talk about 4 things I think we can do out of our belief as humanists that we have the capacity, the power in community to address systemic problems. One is, as I spoke about before, let's change our language. Let's lose the language of safe, legal, and rare. Let's lose the language of only women who need abortions. Let's lose the language of the binary in all of our lives, not just around reproductive justice. Let's have a more inclusive language, not because we're the language police or it's politically correct, but because it is inclusive and all of us belong. When we reinforce the binary, we exclude people. And part of what we can do is that subtle and profound shift of changing our language. Learn to tell your story if it is safe for you to do so, and learn to tell it in context. I am aware of my own story as that of a privileged white woman. I had access, I was able to afford the abortion care that I needed, and I had a safety net. That makes all the difference in the world. So I'm aware that my story is not everyone's story, and yet to be able to tell our stories without stigma or shame is liberatory, and it allows other people to do so as well. I've said this before, I think that our opposition, people who want to make abortion feel shameful, have co-opted our silence about a private issue into shame, and I'm not having that. Let's not have that silence equaling shame. Here are some other things that we can do. So that's a little bit education there. You can learn what other people are doing. And by the way, I say if you're following social media, follow content creators of color, follow Black feminist organizations, intersectional feminist organizations, Black social activists, other social activists of color, and listen in on that conversation without commenting yourself. That's a way of education for me, and I recommend it. Here's another thing to do is advocate. Are your Minnesota representatives members of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus in the Minnesota legislature? I'm having trouble with that word this morning. Do they know about it? Where do they stand on reproductive rights? Please let them know where you stand, and let them know that you are a member of a religious community. They so often hear of people from the other side of the issue who are religious people. If that word bugs you, get over it in order to talk to your representatives. Please let them know that the vast majority of Minnesotans, some 79%, support abortion care, that this is not a divisive issue. And if they vote the way you like, if they are strong for reproductive health, rights, and justice, please thank them frequently or urge them to get on board. Sometimes I hear older feminists and pro-choice activists say, where are the young people, that they're not involved in this fight? And I have to tell you, young people and people of color are leading the way on this. They are organizing online, they are advocating online, they are arranging Reproductive Freedom Lobby Day. I think that's March 25th this year. I could be wrong, but I'll make sure I get that date for us. Recognize that there is so much wisdom beyond second wave white feminism. Here's another way to work, and it's to offer direct service in a few ways. One is to become a clinic escort. We have members of our congregation who have been long-time clinic escorts. We can donate to any of the great organizations that directly support women, especially the We Clinic. Oh, I love hearing that the FUS Foundation has granted a Pearson Fund grant to the We Clinic. Awesome folks up in northern Minnesota who are doing really great work. I want to lift up another organization particularly. That's our state abortion fund, Our Justice. Our Justice provides resources and financial help and other kinds of resources to people who are seeking abortion care, whether that be surgical or medical abortion. They have a fantastic website, and they are our partner organization in the lawsuit. There are 4 plaintiffs in the lawsuit that are seeking access to reproductive justice in Minnesota, and Our Justice is one of them. Unrestrict Minnesota is also a great place to give for their advocacy and organizing work, for the way that they are doing something that has never been done in Minnesota, and that in the reproductive justice realm, and that is harnessing the power of grassroots organizations to make systemic change. I am so proud that we are affiliated with Unrestrict Minnesota. I want to say that the huge national reproductive health rights and health organizations are great, and they provide much needed services. And if you are making decisions about donation dollars, they will go further at small organizations, local organizations that are prioritizing grassroots help. And witness. You know me, I think social justice turns on education, advocacy, service, and witness. Witness is learning to tell our stories in context. It's learning to move past our despair and be hopeful about a future in which systems of equality don't just turn on sexism and abortion and birth control, but let's be hopeful about building an intersectional future that reorders society. Humans can think and be and build that. That's the train I want us to be on. My wish list for all of us, especially my adult child's generation, is robust reproductive justice, health, and freedom without stigma or restriction. An end to heteronormative, patriarchal, white supremacy culture, and love and liberation in abundance. May it be so.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All of these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again. Thanks so much for joining us today. Join in our online coffee hour and talk about some of the things that Rev. Kelli has been addressing today. Our closing words are by Maya Angelou and her poem, Continue. My wish for you is that you continue. Continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue to dare to love deeply and risk everything for the good thing. Continue to float happily in the sea of infinite substance, which set aside riches for you before you had a name. So may it be.
I was done at 16, showing up for class. I was out there in the ring, learning how to kick some ass. I was done at 16, using my mama's keys. It was all on me, it was all on me. Were no free rides, were no IOUs. I pulled my weight, yeah, I paid my dues. And I showed up to enlist on the first day of recruits. How about you? How about you? And I'm my brother's keeper every chance I can. And I pay my taxes like any working man. And I feel I've earned my right to choose. You don't get to play God, man, I do. You don't get to play God, man, I do. You get to run the world in your special way. You get much more than your say. Government, religion, it's all just patriarchy. I must admit, you leave this one thing to me. Just leave this one thing to me. Just leave this one thing to me. Just leave this one thing. 'Cause there's one thing that a man needs to be truly free. This is a modern world, and that one thing is money. But there are two things that a woman needs: control over her own body. I pay the price on top of everything. Each month a bill, each month a reckoning. And each seed that dies, I cry and I bleed. So you can't tell me, no, you can't tell me. I am a soldier, it's my blood that flows. I'd give my life so that this tree can grow. You don't know creation like I know. So you can't tell me, no, you can't tell me. You can't tell me, no, you can't tell me. You get to run the world in your special way. You get much more than your say. Government, religion, it's all just patriarchy. I must insist you leave this one thing to me. Just leave